Hey nerds, we are here at the black carpet premiere of the Umbrella Academies, and we got to talk with the cast, the creators, about what makes this unorthodox superhero story perfect for TV.
I think it was a way that we hadn't seen superheroes before, and also like being in a band is a lot like being in a dysfunctional family, so there was a lot of life experience I could draw from.
That's the thing, I mean, the body that he has, yeah, I mean, that alone it was tricky for me, you know, as an actor to have that body, because it was a completely new thing for me to have anything on top of like my normal clothes, you know, to act in. So I think the biggest thing was it made me feel very different from the off, you know, it made me feel like Luther, it made me feel like more cumbersome, and then in turn made me feel more awkward in that body, which was perfect for Luther because he doesn't like his body, he hates his body, he doesn't want to be in it, he doesn't want to look like that. So I think what that comes with is like a deep sort of resentment for the past he's had, you know, and a deep resentment for his power, his super strength power.
Probably a good thing that she's kind of taking a step back from her powers to kind of sort out her own personal life and also figure them out, because I don't know if we would have a show if she was using them. So I think the ability to manipulate and change people's decision making and choices, I think that is such a crazy power and so unique. I've never really heard of a power like that in, you know, a world that is so saturated with superheroes and powers and action. And so I definitely think it is probably the most powerful, but I think because it's not a physical power, I think it gets overlooked.
That's Hargreaves' dream. To get these kids to a place from birth, which is where I started, looking at the long term, you're going to save the world. That's what I hope you'll do. That's what we hope all our children will do, right? It's part of the attraction to the show. It's a domestic drama. It's very normal. It's what all parents want for their children. The very best, but mostly the best of them achieving their potential to be the best they can be. And so, frankly, it struck me as actually just totally day-to-day normal. And maybe that's why I got the job.
It was really interesting because obviously she's built in the image of like a perfect mother. Everything you expect from this perfect mother, very 1950s, very nurturing, very loving, really just the perfect idea of mom. But then obviously this is not a perfect family, and there's a lot of challenges, you know. The kids walk in the room with blood all over them because they just went on a mission. So it was really cool to play with this idea of being your typical mother to a very, very, very not typical family. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a cool challenge, to not play too much chimpanzee and also to bring that human element into it as well. I felt like the really cool thing too is that he's an elderly chimpanzee, and yet he's being a lot of the emotional support, I think, for so many of the kids that are now grown up. And I really quite like that. He's a very lovable character, very relatable, I think, in so many ways, and I think he's got a really good heart. And so it was a real pleasure to be able to play that very nuanced and in some ways sort of slower down, like to play an elderly anything. It was just nice to bring more like worldly wisdom and heart to that. So real pleasure to be part of it, yeah.
There's a few action scenes in the series with Five that were very fun, and you really can see how physically capable Five is. And you can see just how much damage he can do. So for me, that was a lot of fun to, I guess, experience a more fight scene aspect. It's not as much layered and subtle as you would with more dramatic scenes. So stunt work is always a nice turn on acting.
I think the character I like the most on the comic book, it's Space Boy, which is #1, Luther. So, and I think that's one of the characters the audience, the readers, the fans are most anxious to see, because he's big and you know, very expressive and different, and they're anxious to see how that works on real life. And on the series it's different from the comic, but I'm really happy with how they dealt with that and what they did, how they worked with that. And the character is great. Tom did a great job portraying him, and what the writers wrote as well for him. So I really happy how they dealt with that, which is my favorite character.
Not so much as like being the older, like, but more like as he's been put as the leader, I suppose. It's a huge responsibility for him because he feels the pressure, particularly when they've disbanded, he feels the pressure to bring them back together, especially when the dad has died, you know, that he is now the only one that can bring them back together.
First of all, it's all about the story, like really feeling where the story is and where it should be, not trying to push too hard on emotion, and not trying to push too hard on comedy or not trying to push too hard on anything, because what we wanted to do was ground it. In grounding the story musically and in grounding the story from a character perspective, it sort of gave it a little bit of a quirkiness, which is sort of counterintuitive, but it really does that, because you try and ground these characters that have superpowers, and all of a sudden it's sort of a sort of augmented reality. It feels like it's real because they feel like real people. Like, you know, there's a drug addict and there's, you know, a dude who's a hairy guy, big hairy guy, and like they all sort of are real people. They have real feelings that just happen to have these superpowers. We haven't really seen superheroes or people with superpowers portrayed in that way before. So I found that it made writing the music a lot more interesting.
It's so complex and there's so much to it that it's very hard to tell the story. We had a very hard time telling the story in 2 hours. So we had a number of writers attempt it, but the series gives us a chance to really explore the concept. And, you know, as good as the first season is, and it's really great, we have some really fun stuff for season 2 as we dig deeper into the family's beginning and a look back maybe at some of the things that led them to where they're at.
The landscape of television has changed so much in the last 5 years. When we first started developing this, it didn't feel like it was possible. And all of a sudden, when the movie had stalled, we looked and said, oh my God, TV is totally different now. Maybe we can pull this off. And we have pulled it.